Hi and welcome to today's video, which follows the normal chaotic kind of video that I normally do. Today we're talking about 50mm lenses, and we're going to be talking about 3 of those, how that enables me to create the Leica Look for many of my photos, my wedding photos, and we'll then go on to looking at how I actually edit these photos in Lightroom to enhance the straight out of camera pictures to get the Leica Look. At some point in the future, when I've got a day free, probably a few months time, I will create a preset that I'll actually enable people to buy for a few dollars. But today I'm going to run through in Lightroom, after we've spoken about lenses, I'll run through in Lightroom exactly all the sliders, what I've changed, how I edit the photos, how I get that look, how I shoot the actual photo at the time. So if you're interested, if you like the Leica Look, this will take you a big step towards getting that. Okay, if you've watched any of my previous videos, and by the way, if you'd like to subscribe and hit the bell, you will of course get notified of new videos and look through some of the old videos. But I think the most recent one I did was on the Leica Look and how I was using the Nikon 50mm 1.2 Ai lens manual focus to get a big step towards the Leica Look, which I also explained in a previous video. So the Leica Look, very briefly in one sentence, is the look achieved by the Leica rangefinder camera, cameras, probably mainly the M9, possibly some of the others as well, but mainly the M9 because of its sensor. When fitted with one of their really fast 50mm prime lenses, they produce straight out of camera images which are just, for me, the absolute most beautiful photos you can ever see. And that's what I'm aiming to achieve. However, I don't have £6,000 for a camera and £10,000 for a lens. But with the Nikon Z5 combined with the right lens, you can get a step towards that. Add in the work you can do in Lightroom, and you can pretty much get a very, very similar looking image for, what is it, 15% of the cost. So first of all, let's talk about lenses. Let's start with the cheap and easy version. The 50mm 1.8 G lens from Nikon. It's very underrated actually. It's actually a really, really good lens. I've used in the past few years, I've used a huge range of cameras, Nikon, D700, 750, 800, more recently the D750 and now the Z5 as well. In between that, I used for 2 years the Sony A7 III. On the Sony, I had all prime lenses. I did have one zoom, but mostly used prime lenses, 35, 50, 85 and 135, all 1.4 apart from the 135 which is 1.8, all Sigma lenses, which combined with the Sony give images which I never fell in love with. I never really liked those images. Far too digital, far too sharp, far too much, just looked like mobile phone pictures. I really didn't see any character, excuse me, any emotion. They didn't seem to have any feeling. They were just really flat and to my mind boring, which is what got me back to Nikon. Where are we now? 9 months, 10 months ago, back to the D780, and then about 7 months ago the Z5. So back to Nikon lenses. This is as sharp as the 50mm Sigma lens, certainly in the centre anyway. The Sigma lenses have got fantastic sharpness and image quality right across the frame. This does fall off a little bit towards the edges, but it's still a fantastic lens, and for the price, if you're looking for a 50mm prime lens, you're not going to go wrong with this. It's wonderful. But it has got limitations. It's only 1.8, and I know from experience that a 1.4 lens will give slightly more Leica Look, but even that doesn't really go far enough, which means the Nikon 1.2 50mm lens, which is manual focus, which until I got the Z5 wouldn't have been an option, because on a DSLR, manually focusing, and I've gone dark again. I don't know what's happening with this camera. I do apologise. The picture seems to keep going light and dark, and I'm not even moving. I don't understand. Let's just come back light again. Right, okay. Combined with the focus peaking on a mirrorless camera, the Z5, it enables you to use a manual focus lens reasonably effectively, and it becomes a practical proposition even at something like a wedding. It does mean you've got to slow down. I've had to slow down. Choose your shots, use it at the right time. It's not a shoot anything anywhere type of lens, but when you get the right situation, it does then produce much, for me, much better pictures than, say, a 50mm 1.8 or 35 1.8. So that's why I have this lens fitted on this camera. However, I'll admit that if this had an AF button and I could use this using autofocus, I most certainly would. Manual focus has got its advantages. As I say, it does make you slow down, choose your shots, and be more picky. But still, at a wedding, with the hustle and bustle that's going on at a wedding, it's nice to be able to just pick it up, see something happening, pick it up, focus, shoot. Obviously, you can't do that with this lens. So, in an effort to try and find something which was almost as good, but was autofocus, I recently got the Sigma 50mm 1.4, which is AF. Now this is the EX lens. This is not the art lens. I've had the art lens on the Sony when I had that, and as I say, I didn't like the look. So I got this in the hope that because it's an older lens, it maybe have more character and would give better looking photos, more pleasing to me anyway. So I got this, put it on the FTZ adapter on the Z5, and it's actually going back today because a few problems with it. One, on the FTZ adapter and using continuous focus with back button focus, it's not actually hunting. If you actually look at the focus, it's not actually moving, but the focus motor is continually chuntering away. It's just grinding away like a mad thing. But it's not actually, doesn't seem to actually change the focus. It's just really, really annoying. If you're on single shot focus, it just focuses very quickly. Got the focus, and that's fine. But as I say, I mainly use continuous focus. So that's one problem. Next problem is it's actually not very sharp. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, hold on, why isn't he talking about the Nikon 50mm 1.4 G lens? Well, the reason I'm not talking about that is because I've had two of those, and they've both been really, really soft focus. Compared to the 1.8, the 1.4 Nikon G lens, I think, of the two that I've had, have been really, really soft. I mean, almost to the point you think, well, it's just not focusing. It's at 1.4. If you stop down to 2.8 or anything above that, it does get a lot better. But really not a very good 1.4 lens at all, in my opinion. Hence, trying out the Sigma. This also isn't very sharp. So, of these three lenses, by far the sharpest is the 1.2 manual focus lens, followed by the 1.8 G lens, followed by the Sigma 1.4. And I did side-by-side comparisons. I won't bore you with going through the pictures, but I did side-by-side comparisons and took shots, and not only is the manual focus 1.2 lens sharper, one of the things that I think that makes it produce beautiful pictures is the way it renders shadow and light, the contrast. I did a shot of in the bedroom where my wife's got all loads of makeup and stuff spread out and that, and I put my watch. This poxy camera, I'm going to have to change this. This is just crazy. I put my watch on it, which has got a really black face with chrome numbers. And when I zoomed in and looked at the photos from the 3 different lenses, it was so noticeable that the black from the manual focus lens was absolutely pure black. The other 2 lenses are a slightly lighter shade of black. And so I think there's something about the manual focus lens, the way it renders shadows and light and contrast, the way it gets contrast, I think contributes to the look of the photo. Therefore, Sigma's going back, the Nikon stays in my bag when I do need a 50mm autofocus lens. Most of the time I'm going to be trying to shoot with this camera, manually focusing with this lens. However, in the pipeline, and so if you want to find out about this, do subscribe, as I say. In the pipeline is a 7 Artisans F1.2 Ai 50mm lens. I've been in touch with them. None in the UK at the moment. They have some coming next week. I will be buying one of those. When I get that, I'll be giving that a full run through and see how that focuses, how that actually works in use, because one of my fears, if you like, about that is that this at 1.2 isn't easy to get perfect focus. And if I just show you, going from infinity down to the closest focus requires that much movement of the focus ring. It's around about 180 degrees. The 7 Artisans, from what I can see of it, only requires about 90 degrees. And I'm just wondering whether using the focus ring to get that final last bit of absolute perfect focus is just not going to have enough movement in the focus ring to actually get that. But I will buy it. They've already said they're happy for me to try it. If I don't want it, just send it back. But I'll try that out and see how that works and see what the images look like compared to this one. Okay, so the images from that look slightly liker because of the really shallow depth of field. When I shoot this, I also underexpose by 2/3 of a stop is my standard, and I've set the camera up to shoot on this lens. I've got U1 set up to shoot manually, and on U1 I've got my top function button on the front set to zoom in. So I press it, it zooms in, I press it again, it comes back to normal. That helps with focusing. The moment you put a manual focus lens in, you get focus peaking and all that stuff pop up. And U1 is also set to 2/3 of a stop underexposed. Other than that, most of the other stuff is pretty much the same as my normal settings. So let's now pop into Lightroom, and you can be relieved that we're no longer going to have this crazy exposure going up and down all over the place. We'll look at the screen, look at Lightroom, and I'll explain what I do to each photo to get what I think is the Leica Look. Let's take a look. So here we're looking at an engagement shoot I did 2 days ago with Maxine and Phil in their garden. And I have to say they have the most amazing garden. I'm not sure what his job is. I think he's got an engineering business, but it's a fantastic garden. It really is. Anyway, I digress. Here are the photos that I've selected, and I think I probably only took about 50 shots during the engagement shoot. Their wedding is in about 6 weeks' time. It was just a chance to meet really and get a few photos. Nothing too serious. And mostly shot, as I say, with the Z5. We're using the 50mm 1.2 lens. So let's now look at the develop module And these are just straight out of camera. Let's go back to the first one. And actually, that first one isn't a very good example of a Leica Look. It's the problem with it is, to get the Leica Look, you need to have the right scene. And this couple standing fairly close to the background doesn't really give you the Leica Look. This one here is much more the Leica Look for me. So let's talk about this one. So as you can see, I'll hit reset just to show there's nothing set, no changes made in Lightroom as it was from camera. And I think what you get with 1.2 obviously is your subject in focus and a completely smashed to pieces background, especially when you can get some light in the background, which is why they look particularly dark here, because they were in quite dark shadow. And the background is quite bright with the sun out. I use matrix metering, so the camera is getting a balance between the two. I don't use spot metering. I use spot metering if I'm using autofocus, using other settings. So remember, on the camera I've set this to U1, which is my manual focus setting, and I've just got my focus point is kind of in the center. So I just put that over my subject, do the focusing, recompose, take the shot. Which means that if I've got spot metering, then my spot would be about here. So this picture would have come out almost completely black. Otherwise, I've got to move my spot over to my subject and not do focus and recompose. I just find focus and recompose easier for manual focusing. So, right, what do I do for this? Well, I've got some presets, and the preset I've got, so I've applied the Leica colour preset to this photo, and let's run through all the settings here. As I say, in a few weeks I will be doing this preset. I'll be making it available for a few dollars if you would like to buy it, but if you get a pen and paper now, you can write down these settings and you will get this look, which isn't finished yet, by the way. There's more to come yet, but just write these down to start with. So exposure is set as standard, but as I said earlier, I underexpose by 2 stops in camera. So contrast is +8, highlights -61, shadows +3. Don't really think that makes a difference, but anyway, +3, whites -63, and blacks -6. Texture +31, clarity +25, dehaze +18, and vibrance +15. They're basic settings. That will get it roughly in the right ballpark. However, you'll notice on the histogram here that we've got no blacks and we've got no highlights. This, by the way, this preset I've developed over the last weeks, if not months, by looking at proper Leica photos. I kept adjusting this preset and changing and tweaking it until I finally managed to get something, which is this, that generally speaking, it gives you photos that look like they've come from a Leica. So the tone curve, get rid of the highlights, okay? So you just click on the line and then you double click right on the edge, and that'll move this line down so that you get this flat here. Same with the shadows. Double click on the line here to get the point, and then double click here to get the line popped up to level here. HSL, what have we got? Hue, -7 for the yellow, -14 for the greens. I find that this just changes. Pause. Okay, lovely. Hello. There you go. I find doing that just slightly changes the look of the greens, and green is the most predominant colour in the world, apparently, and in most photos, certainly if you're doing anything outside, there's going to be some green in it, almost certainly. And just gives their photos a particular look, again, which I think resembles Leica. Saturation. We want more orange. We want, so it's plus 23. We want yellow to be down, so minus 23 and minus 25 for the green. You can obviously tweak these yourself afterwards, but this will give you a good starting point. Luminance. Luminance is about giving skin tones more luminosity to make them stand out more from the background. So we've got plus 21 for the red and plus 42 for the orange. Colour grading. I've done nothing to the highlights or to the midtones, but the shadows are blue. So I've just moved the blue for the shadows slightly over this way. You can see it there. And if you just do that, it just gives the shadows that we have got just a tiny bit of a blue tint to them. Detail. Now you might need to change this on your camera. Sorry, in Lightroom from what I've set here. This is for the Z5. For this lens, you might want to change it, but for this lens, for the Z5, I've got some sharpening, and well, sharpening is 86, radius 27, detail 11, and masking 72. For noise reduction, because although this is shot at ISO 450, quite often at a wedding, I've got some much higher ISO figures here, and I could well be shooting 6, 8, maybe even 10 or 12,000 occasionally, and I do need some noise reduction. So I've got noise reduction at around about 50 for both luminance and colour. Detail is right down the bottom here at 9 or 10, and contrast is up at 80, around about 80. That will deal with most of the problems from noise, but not all. You might have to, on some shots, do some more work. Lens correction. No point in putting enable profile corrections. I don't think, let me correct myself on that if I'm wrong. I don't think it will make a difference. It's come up with Nikon Cool Peaks. I don't think that's me. No, let's not bother with the profile corrections. I don't think it'll do anything. Remove chromatic aberration. Yep, that'll help on occasions, so it's worth having that there. Detail we've done. Transform effects. We've got some vignetting, so I've added. So we're -5 on the post-crop vignetting. Midpoint is 26. Roundness is -37. And feather is 64. I haven't added any grain, and that, I believe, is about it. I haven't done anything to the calibration. So that's the preset. So if you do all those things, save that as a preset, then you have got effectively the Leica color. Why has that gone black and white? The Leica color preset. Right, what I then do to each photo individually. So I would apply that to as I come along and I find it's a 50mm 1.2 shot, I would simply click that and apply that preset to that photo. I then use the radial filter. In fact, I use this on pretty much every photo I do, regardless of what camera and lens I've used. And I've got, again, a setting for Leica. And this basically, let me show you if I just add it. It just adds a little bit of sharpness, a little bit of texture and clarity. It lifts the shadows and it drops the highlights. And just makes people stand out a little bit more. So I've now gone back to the main settings and we'll just lift the exposure just a tiny bit. And that for me would be a Leica camera photo. It's the sort of shots you typically see coming out of Leica cameras, and I'm just trying to find another one. I took some on a bridge. Here we go. So again, straight out of camera, that's what it looks like. apply the preset. Because they're both together, I won't bother doing two individual radio filters. Now I think that needs a bit more exposure on them to make them stand out a little bit more, so I'll just gradually drag that up until they stand out, and then maybe increase the exposure of the whole scene to something like that. Now I'm not saying this is a brilliant photo, in fact I'm probably not actually going to give this to them. I don't think her facial expression is particularly attractive, but what I like is the variation in light and shadow. We've always got some black in these shots, and we've always got some quite bright highlights. Let's just go to another one. So we've always got some highlights, in this case just some bokeh in the background, and we've also got blacks which are accentuated by the preset. And using the radial filter, we can really bring out the people in the picture. And maybe, just maybe, the shadows are a bit too black, a bit too dark in here, so we can just lift the shadows, make the whole thing a little bit brighter. And hopefully that looks like a Leica Look. So I hope you found that useful. As I say, I will be back as soon as I get my 7 Artisans lens. I'll come back and we'll do some more looking in detail at what sort of photos that gives, and seeing if it's a practical manual focus lens. Thank you for watching. Cheers for now. Enjoy your photography.